They're mega, they're ultra, and today we're counting down my top 10 picks for Megazord toys. Welcome once again to Inside the Toy Room. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel, hit the little bell so you're notified every single time we upload a new video here on Inside the Toy Room. Today we're doing another top 10 episode, and we're going to take a look at my top 10 Megazord toys. Now, I'm going to be predominantly focusing on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, mainly because that's the era of Power Rangers that I grew up with, and in my opinion, and I'm not being biased, that's the best. It's definitely when Power Rangers are the most successful. It's had little splits up and down throughout the years. It's still running to this day, and it is still popular with kids, but it's nowhere near as popular as it was in the 1990s. I mean, you only have to look at what was taking place in toy stores, people getting trampled on, parents was fighting over toys because they wanted them for Christmas that year. God, that was when toys was so cool. That was before Amazon and things like that came along, and you had to go into Toys R Us and have a good time and, you know, face human interaction. Anyways, let's get into our top 10. Starting off our list, we're going to have the Ninja Megazord. Now, this was made popular, of course, by the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, which was released in 1995, which was the first time they got their ninja powers. But of course, in the TV show, they also had to write in some way of them getting the ninja powers, and it was because of this weird guy called Ninja, who invented the power coins and gave them the power of ninja. And they got these new Zords, which they of course all combined into the Ninja Megazord. Now, as a kid, it wasn't something that I rushed to the shops and wanted. In fact, I never actually owned it. Around that time, they also had something called the Shogun Megazord, which I will be getting to on this list. Just as a Megazord, it looked cool, yeah, but I kind of felt like it was relying on some old things, and I didn't want a Zord of a frog, and I really wasn't a big fan of some of them when they broke down to their individual Zords. But that said, still cool looking Zord, right? And I thought the head looked really good anyways, and it was part of the movie. So yeah, number 10 on our list is the Ninja Megazord. In at number 9 would be the Mega Dragon Zord from the original series. Now, I'm not going to choose either between the original Bandai toy or the Legacy toy, because I will be doing that later in this list with certain ones, and I'll explain why when I get to them. But with this one, I'm just looking at it as an overall TV show product. Now, the Legacy one is clearly more accurate to the TV show because everything about it is more of an honour to the original Japanese design as opposed to what Bandai wanted to sell in the United States to kids. However, I always thought this was a really cool toy when you put it together. So yeah, that's number 9 on our list. Number 8 on the list would be the original White Tiger Megazord, and again, I think this was also in battle mode or whatever, but I really loved the look of this one. I thought it was such a cool looking figure. I mean, when it all came together on the first time on the TV show, I remember thinking, I really want that, I really want that, and when I did have it, I was slightly disappointed, and that's why it's number 8. The reason being, the pterodactyl would attach to his arm just here. The figures of that, the pterodactyl would never actually click to it. It would always just slide off. You couldn't actually play with it with the pterodactyl on its arm as a shield. Or Firebird Thunderzord, sorry, not pterodactyl. Pterodactyl was the original. Firebird Thunderzord. Firebird Thunderzord would supposedly attach to its arm and it would fall off. Either way, that kind of ruined it for me, and that's why, you know, if we're looking at playability, it's going further down on the list than, let's say, what the Legacy would do. And number 7 on the list would be the Legacy version of the White Tiger Megazord. The reason being is for what I just said in number 8 about the Firebird always falling off. Well, Legacy, at least my friend's version of this, it actually clicked on and it stayed there. I don't know if he'd done anything to customize it or whatever, but when I saw it in his house on his shelf, it was perfect and it looked so show accurate. It looked like the toy that I always wanted when I was a kid and that I could have played with. And obviously the Legacy versions of these Zords are so much nicer. They've put a little bit more detail into things to make them more show accurate, to give them that extra pristine bits of gold and bits of silver and things like that that just gave it that extra pop. So yeah, that's why it's number 7 on this list. In at number 6, and possibly one of my favourite actual show Megazords, and that would be the Shogun Megazord. The reason why it's not higher up on my list though is because as a toy it was very blocky. I mean, if you remember the Shogun Megazords or the Shogun Zords, they were just 5 soldier looking characters, and then they all had different heads that had a little nod to the Ninja Zord, but then you pieced them all together and it was just big blocky arms, big blocky chest, big blocky legs. And yeah, that looked really cool, and the helmet to it, oh, I thought that was so good. But I loved the overall look of the Shogun Megazord, but as a toy, again, it would have been better if they could have somehow managed to give it some more points of articulation, if they could have made the hands move somehow, or made the knees move, something like that. I know it's difficult when you're piecing all these things together, and I can imagine it's a creator's nightmare to get that stuff together, but yeah, Shogun Megazord, still an overall look, looked beautiful. Never got one released with the white arm though, like it was in the TV series. It was a pink arm when we got it, and that always bugged me a little, and I would still love to get my hands on. I know somewhere in Japan they did release their version of it, obviously from their TV show, and it does have the white arm. The last time I looked, it was well into the thousands to purchase that, and I just don't have that sort of capital, unfortunately. So yeah, number 6 on the list, Shogun Megazord. Number 5 on the list would be the original Megazord. Now, I think this is a beautiful, and a lot of people are going to argue with me and say this should be number 1 or it should be higher up on the list. And yeah, I did love it because that was the era of Power Rangers I grew up with. Obviously, the first series going to second, third, Mighty Morphin drifted off towards Zeo. But either way, I did love that original design. The original toy pieces together so beautifully. I thought it was so, and at the time it was kind of revolutionary to have all these things come together and make this Megazord, and it was very exciting. Its overall design, when I do look at it and I compare it to some of the other Megazords, I just prefer the look of some of the others. It's nothing against this one, I'm not saying that I dislike it, I just prefer the look of some of the other Megazords that I'm going to get to further. Now we're in our top 5 of this list. Number 4, and possibly my favourite toy as a kid, would be the original Thunder Megazord. When I first started buying Power Rangers toys as a kid, that was one of the first things I wanted. I really wanted that Thunder Megazord. I remember getting the Thunder Assault team one Christmas, then later on I got the Red Dragon Thunder Zords, piece them all together and make the Thunder Megazord, and I thought it was amazing. It looked so cool. It was everything that I wanted to. I loved the transparency of the green orb in the middle. It's not something that I actually own in this toy room, and I do want to get it just for that purpose of it being probably one of my top, definitely my top 3 favourite toys as a kid overall for nostalgia purposes. It's taking number 4 on this list, and I'll explain that a little later on. Number 3 on this list, and it would be the original Megazord again, but this time the Legacy version. Again, not something I own, but Matt Myers does own. I remember when we visited his toy room, I pointed it out. Again, it's those things that Legacy did, the attention to detail to make it a bit more show accurate. The chest plate's a little more narrow, the shoulders are a little more broader, it just pieces together nicely, and it just looks like a beautiful statue, to be fair, more so than the toy. So I guess for playability, it's got some metal pieces on it, so I guess you wouldn't really want to get this damaged. It's definitely more of a collector's item, same with all the Legacy Zords, but it's still a very cool looking toy, and yeah, that's why it's top 3 on our list. Top 2, and sticking to the original Megazord, we're going to look at the Ultra Megazord, which I have right here. And if you haven't already checked it out, you can check out our episode where I pieced this together, which is right here. The Ultra Megazord is of course when Titanus comes into play. Megazord combines with the Dragon Zord, and then that combines with Titanus to make the Ultra Zord. I thought it was the coolest thing. As a kid, I mean, it was mind-blowing. It looked amazing. How did all these things piece together and stuff like that? And now I get to look at it as a 30-year-old man, not play with it. I just appreciate how incredible it looks. White, black, gold dragon head. You've got the Dragon Zord on top here. The chest piece just looks incredible. That looks like an amazing toy. Now, of course, there is a Legacy version of that, and I'm gonna couple that with this one. If you could get all of those pieces together to make the Ultra Zord with the Legacy collection, I imagine it looks outstanding. However, I only have the Legacy Dragon Zord. I don't have the money for the Legacy Titanus, and I don't have any of the black and gold ones. And that's going to be something I'm going to mention real quickly before we get to our number 1 pick. The black and gold Megazords, of course, they released some originally and then the Legacy ones again in 2014, but I kind of felt like it'd be unfair to put them on the list because to me they're more of a, it's daft saying a collector's item, right? I mean, look around the room. They were never intended, to me, there was never show accurate. There was kind of like a spin-off, if you would. So I never really kind of counted them into the original list of Megazords because even though I'm including the legacies and things like that, I just kind of felt like they replicate essentially what that Megazord is, but it's in black and gold, or what that Dragonzord is, but it's in black and gold, or Titanus in black and gold. And again, I imagine when you put them all together, looks outstanding, would make an amazing collector's piece, but it's not something that I really wanted to include on this list. And number one would be this, the Legacy Thunder Megazord. As I mentioned, the Thunder Megazord was my favourite toy as a kid. So when I was older and Bandai did their second wave of Legacy toys in 2015 and this got released, I was dying to get my hands on it. My amazing fiance Gemma surprised me, of course, one Christmas. It may have been my birthday actually, with this. It's just so beautiful. The missing details that weren't on the original one are all here. The golds, I mean this is metal here, but it's just got a better shade of gold to it. It doesn't have that plasticky look to it. It doesn't have the transparency here, because with the original one you could lower that and put these tiny little coloured figures in there and it'd look like you've got the Power Rangers in there, right? This doesn't do that. Maybe for a kid that would be kind of gutting, but to me as an adult, and I'm just looking at this as a statue that sits on my shelf, it's awesome. I absolutely love this figure. We've got a real metal chain on it. If I was to have one downside about it, it is a bit flimsy. Like, I'm always very careful with this, and I lay in bed at night just worrying that I'm gonna hear a big crash and I'm gonna come in and find it in pieces on the floor and my heart would break. I love this figure. I mean, everything about it, it's so show accurate, where on the original they would have just copped out with some of the lightning bolt stickers and stuck them on instead. Instead you've got beautiful paint where on either side of the I cannot even remember, right, hold on, when the morphing and the call in the second series, when they were calling on the Zords, it used to take forever because they would have to refer to the first series name and then what its new name was. So for example, the Red Ranger would say Tyrannosaurus Red Dragon Thunderzord Power, boom, and then you see the Tyrannosaurus get zapped by lightning and become the Red Dragon, which was really cool, right? It was Triceratops into Unicorn Thunderzord Power, Sabertooth Tiger, Griffin Thunderzord Power. There we are, crying out loud. So yeah, that's the Unicorn and Griffin on the feet have got so much more detail than what the originals did. Just a beautiful action figure. And again, I can see on my Firebird round here, this has those little connections on the arm that on the underside of the wings that I believe help it connect to the arm of the Legacy White Tigerzord. I don't own the Legacy White Tigerzord. This is the original, so I can't actually try it. But I do remember on my original Thunder Megazord, the same thing would happen with the Firebird. It kind of wraps around here somewhat as a skirt, and it just used to drop down all the time because it never had anything to really click in. You just kind of hope that it would stay there. And 9 times out of 10, I just used to play with it without the Firebird because it'd do my head in. They corrected that with the Legacy, and it's got 2 little attachments where it just clicks into the back here. So yeah, I absolutely adore this. It takes such a proud place in this toy room. Kind of honours something that I loved as a kid, but it's kind of done even better. My fiance got it for me. There's a bunch of reasons why, but yeah, this makes number 1 on my list of top 10 Megazords. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Let us know what your top 10 Megazords are. As I mentioned, I can imagine a lot of people would stick that original Megazord on there. Again, I was just looking at Mighty Morphin. I wasn't looking at Zeo, Ninja Storm, and various others that came after that I've lost count. Galaxy, SPD, and all that stuff. Way over my head, way after my time. I was too busy watching professional wrestling at that point. I loved Mighty Morphin Power Rangers growing up. I love it now. I love taking trips down nostalgia lane and loading up episodes of it on Netflix. Legacy Megazord in at number 1. Thank you very much for checking out this episode, and make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. Hit the little bell so you're notified every single time we upload a new episode here on Inside the Toy Room. We're Dragon Tyrannosaurus Thunderzord Power now!